All right, let's give this a go. Our first installment of budget boot camp, because God knows of the emails I do get, most of them have a very similar story. And it's, I want to do the RV thing, travel, or we're really struggling financially and we want to move into the RV or trailer to like cut down on costs and save money and get out of debt. So it's one of the two. But in both of them, there's a freight train of a theme that runs through all of them, which is our finances are shit, our credit is shit, and like we don't know how to make this happen. Now, let me be so clear. I am not a certified financial planner. I have no idea what those people do, but I know they're certified. I don't have any license for like investment advice or anything. My resume is strictly this. I started my professional career making a whopping $20,000 in news and still took myself to Africa on a volunteer vacation. And I did not make really any money. And today, like no money, thank you coronavirus, but have still pulled off all the goals, dreams, and ambitions besides building a mega mansion on the beach with lots of cows, so many cows, and a moat to keep people the fuck off my property. That hasn't happened yet. That will happen, just not yet. Probably the cows before the mansion, the moat before anything else. I've been able to like make it happen, and thinking back to even see if this was a worthwhile conversation I can have, you know, there are certain things that I've done where it seems implausible that I did it financially. For example, I was still making little money, like I think I was making $40,000 at the TV station. And I bought a $250,000 home and renovated it. And, you know, as you know, I had to sell the babe cave. But I remember people, like, with all the renovations and everything else, and, like, they were like, how the hell are you pulling this off? And I'm like, because I'm a motherfucking wizard. That's how. No, and it's because of the things that I have just picked up. Because if you start off having no money, you will become scrappy as hell. But most people don't learn that skill early. I have said to my girlfriends who were with me those years we were making $20K, one of them was making $19K in our news station, that was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. Because if I can survive on that amount of money and still go on a badass vacation, then I can get through anything else. And so I just have learned a lot of financial survival skills in that way. I'll also say there's no money coming from mom and dad. There never was. I'm no trust fund baby. There's never been an inheritance. The only thing I've ever inherited were my grandmother's recipes and some of her books. And that's it. And what else would set me ahead financially? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I had college debt. I paid it off. I can do one on college debt, how like I knocked tens of thousands of dollars off my bill legally. But anyway, my point is that I know that no matter what I say in this, there's going to be countless people who just go to town in the comment section. You can always tell who they write like a novel of all the disagreements. And anything financial advice, you're allowed to disagree. But I'm just telling you from my perspective how I've pulled some of these things off. And if I was in your position right now, knowing what I know, what I would do to handle it. I was able to buy the house. I was able to do the van. Nobody could figure out how I drove around the country for 7 months without a job and like didn't come back totally destitute. And you know, you figure it out, but you have to know some ways of moving money around and how to be scrappy in order to pull this stuff off. So speaking of scrappy, I finally got a haircut, a COVID haircut, which is so light now. Now, I didn't like deal with this in any capacity. Like I was in a knot all day long, like it always is. And then I let it down to like give the illusion that I tried to get ready for this video. But like she like, look at it, it's all like layered now, fancy. When she took the knot out of my head and like all my hair, which was down to like where you would get a tramp stamp, like right above your butt crack. She goes, she's like pulling my hair up. She goes, "Oh my God, when was the last time you got a haircut?" And I'm like, "When was the last time you had some manners, Tina?" Tina was great. But haircut. Women spend over $100 every couple weeks. Cut, color, blow dry, all that bullshit. No. I go to the community college for $5. That's closed right now. So Tina, over there at Fantastic Sam's, Mr. Fantastic Sam, who I actually interviewed when he was alive in college, and it was $15 haircut. Would I like to go get $150 like super where they massage your scalp and like give you green tea and weird looking cups that don't have handles? Yeah, I would love that. But I know the difference between a need and a want. And that, I would say, as we open up this conversation, is the huge thing that people totally fuck up, is that they have needs that are fixed costs, and then they see the thing that they want, and they have monkey bar syndrome. And monkey bar syndrome is they hold on to all the debt or all the things with this hand, and they want the RV or the travel or whatever it is, and they think they can hold on to both. And you can't do that. One of your arms will fatigue. So you have to let go of the old stuff to get the new stuff. And I will kind of elaborate on that point more, because it's the letting go, let it go, that nobody wants to do. Keep all of the things that I have that I like so much, that are wants, make me feel comfortable, and like still take on all this extra debt. And that's where you just get screwed. Also, other thing is that I swapped my typical shirt for these videos, which is my Detroit PD shirt, bleu, and now went on to Detroit PD gray. So it's almost like you're seeing a whole new person, huh? Okay, needs and wants, yes. The theme sentence that I want to capture all this around, and I've got some emails from people about their financial situations. I will not disclose their identity, but I've kind of condensed their story, and I'll use these as a way to showcase what I'm trying to talk about for Budget Bootcamp, because if I just did this as a general thing, I could go on for hours and hours and hours about all the things I've learned to do with money to get by and to get the damn thing that I want legally. There is no selling dope, none of that. Nope. Okay, and that theme sentence is, you can only hold money with one hand. That's not some like wisdom that I pulled off the internet. It's just my way of thinking about how I want to allocate my money. And it's true, like we don't hold a dollar bill with two hands, right? You only hold money with one hand. And the point there of that sentence is that anytime you're holding money with this hand, there's an opportunity cost. Meaning, if it's all spent or all held up over here, you can't use it over here. So every time you spend money, there is an opportunity cost for, well, I could have paid down this debt, or I could have put that towards saving it for the RV. I didn't, because I'm holding it with this hand. You can only hold money with one hand. So every time you buy something, every time you spend money, you're holding it in that hand, and I want you to start getting really conscious about, well, what could have been in the other hand? Because usually this hand where we're holding all the money is all the stupid shit, like a $150 haircut or whatever it is that you didn't actually need, it was a want. And the opportunity cost is it didn't go to the big dream, it didn't go to paying down your mortgage, it didn't go to paying down your debt or anything else. So you have to get really honest with yourself about which hand you're holding your money in, because that usually tells the entire story of why your finances are totally fucked. Now, you will hear plenty of YouTube videos where they're like, stop spending money on the $4 latte and blah, 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 and like, don't go out to dinner. And yeah, I don't do any of that stuff either. I'm not gonna lie and tell you that like I have frivolous spending like that and still get other things done. No, I mean, when I'm actually making money and making more money, you know, yeah, I might splurge on something like that. But really, it's our big fixed costs and housing, which is what we're going to talk about today, and all the things that we've leveraged, that those are the big picture, and then everything else is like the little stuff that is easy on a YouTube video or for some motivational speaker to like tell you is going to fix your finances. And I'll tell you what, that latte is not going to fix your finances because you made stupider choices along the way to driving to getting that latte. Okay, all right, so let me tell you, and this is kind of a condensed of the story of this individual. But this is very common when I talk to people, and I've done some like phone and Zoom or Skype coaching about like how to get your shit together so you can go do the damn thing. In general, the story was massive debt, bad credit, owns a home, but can't afford to fix major failures in that home, system failures in that home, and they have no idea what to do next. Besides save money, duh, we all know that. And their whole thinking was, we're gonna go buy an RV and we're gonna live in it and like that will solve this problem. And it's not gonna solve the problem because you have a home that you can't afford to maintain. So the question to me was, what do you think that we should do? And my first thought, that will be an unpopular thought, is I said I would sell that house. Now, the thing that I will never understand how people feel about, because people feel, that's where you get screwed up. It's like you feel they get attached to things. And remember, you can only hold money in one hand. So all the money that you have tied up in a property is not in the other hand. So there's always an opportunity cost. That said, for a lot of people, it makes sense to buy a home. And for a lot of people, it really doesn't. All right, so if you have a home, you've probably heard that it's the biggest investment of your life and it's an asset. Kick that out of your crazy head. By the way, the whiteboard, we're going to do some math over here. This is not like a decoration that this doesn't stay up here normally. A house is not an asset. Let's just cancel that right now. By definition, an asset is anything that makes you money, that generates income, that brings money in. Your house does nothing but take your money and set it on fire. That's it. You only spend money on a house. You pay an ungodly amount of interest over the lifetime of a loan. If you actually back out your interest that you paid over 30 years, it is way more than the sales price of that home. I mean, it's astronomical. We won't go through all that math, but there's an actual equation you could do to see how much you'll spend in interest. Quite frankly, it's on your closing disclosure. When you buy a home, and at the end they have the paper full of so many numbers that nobody reads it because it's overwhelming, there's a line in there that says, life of the loan, total interest paid, and it's way more than what you even would have paid for the home. But interest allows us to purchase a home in the first place, right? Okay, so a house is not an asset. A house does not generate income. What people get screwed up with is they're like, oh, well, when we sold our house that we had for 10 years, the market was great and we made $25,000. I say, oh, that's fantastic. And it is fantastic. You built up equity, you sold your home, you made some money. The house is only an asset on the day and the moment that you sold it. The rest of the time, it was not an asset. It's a liability. Ask anyone in 2008 if their home was an asset or a liability. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, the market's great right now. Homes are assets. Da, 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 da. Yeah, kind of. But you have no idea what the housing market is going to do. And right now we have a really suspicious thing going on, which is the housing market is like up here. No, I take that back. The housing market is up here. It is like batshit crazy. In Wilmington, then I don't even know why they take pictures of them. They go on the market, right off the market. And stupid prices, homes that haven't been updated. And I hope to God that nothing changes because those people are never going to get what they paid back out if the market stutters at all. The weird thing that's happening right now is that the housing market is up here and underneath it is a very high unemployment, very low consumer confidence and great uncertainty about what is going to happen over the next year or two. Typically, these things should mirror each other. They should support each other. Strong economy, low unemployment, great housing market. Now we have like this inversion where forbearances on mortgages, those are going to come due within, I think, the next 6 months for the bulk of people if they haven't already come due. And then the rent, you know, if the government totally rescues everyone in America on their mortgage and their rent, then yeah, maybe things will keep going back up. But you'll get bit in the ass one way or the other, because if they do save you, you're just going to pay a whole lot more in taxes to pay for all those lifeboats. Yeah, it's crazy. Money doesn't grow on trees. Opportunity cost, right? Okay, the home is not an asset. Just drop it. It's not. It's a liability until the moment that you sell it, and we don't know what's going to happen at the moment that you sell it. The other thing is that, you know, people say, wow, we had the property for 25 years and then we sold it for all this. When you actually do the math, when you adjust the equity increases and you adjust for inflation and cost of living, you kind of like stay pretty even. So yeah, in 20 years you sold it and you made a boatload of money, but now all the houses cost a ton more money, so when you went to buy another one, like, you had to put that all into the next one. So it's a little bit deceiving, but people have just always bought this like American dream, own a home, it's an asset, it's not an asset. So if it's not an asset, that can change our relationship to how we feel about clinging on for dear life to something that we can't afford. And in this case, massive debt, bad credit, can't afford to actually maintain the home. And it was that part that I was like, ooh, we got to deal with this like right now. Because if you can't maintain the home, then it has deferred maintenance. So right now it's, let's say, I don't know, some of the electric doesn't work, but then if you are one big bill away from not being able to maintain any of the systems, then the house loses its value. When you go to sell it, you can't get the dream price that you were hoping for, and then you're going to have to pay the difference to the bank at the end. And so when you start to get to that, like, I can't afford to maintain it, like, that's where the red lights are going. I sold the Babe Cave because my job was gone, and I knew, owning an old house, that if there was one big bill, which could be in a hurricane, the roof goes, if there was a pipe break and the original plaster got soaked, I would have been in major trouble. So I had to list the house for sale. Okay? So I said that. I said, if this was your situation, bad credit, all that, you're thinking about doing the RV thing, if you cannot maintain the home, I would sell it. And I got back the response that I kind of knew I was going to get, and a lot of people say this, and we just need to, much like thinking a house is an asset, just never say this ever again. Can you guess what it is? I've said it, but like, I've also changed my attitude towards this theory. So they said, well, where would we live if we sold our home? And I said, well, have they stopped growing apartments where you live? And this is what I got back, is I don't like making someone else rich. I just feel like they're getting all my money and it's throwing my money away. Here's the thing. When you are in financial trouble, when you have massive debt and you're paying high interest, when you have horrible credit, which means no one's going to want to lend to you, all those things, I would not be so worried about somebody else making decisions that better them financially if the decisions that you're making for yourself are making you poor. Like, let's not be so worried about someone else who made strong financial positions if you were not making them for yourself. Let's instead leverage that person who has the ability to actually help you get to where you want to go. Landlords have such a bad reputation. I've been one. I could not stand the strict majority of my renters because they didn't love the Babe Cave like I did. Renters don't take care of anything like you would, period. And they can be a huge pain in the ass. But everyone thinks that landlords are making all this money, and I'm here to tell you, like, that is false. False. No way. The landlord has to pay the mortgage, the taxes, the interest, the insurance, everything else. And so really, to be perfectly honest with you, at the end, you might make like $150 to $300 a month, $300 if you're lucky, unless you bought the house for nothing in 2010 and like now you can charge a whole lot for it. But really, after all the costs associated with the property, you've got like this teeny tiny margin. No one is getting rich off of that teeny tiny margin. And the second that you bastards break something, that all goes away. The second that the property has to be updated, on the 20th year of the property, it needs a new roof. I mean, all that like gets leveled. What the landlord is smart about doing is that the landlord is not getting rich off your piddly little $200 a month in cash flow, but they're building equity. So they accumulate properties because they're taking on all this risk, and they accumulate the properties, and then they pull the money back out of those properties. So they either renovate them and then refinance them, and they take their money back out of that property and then go make another investment. Or they build up all this equity from years of owning the rental, refinance it, and go make another investment, or sell that house that they've built up equity and move it somewhere else. So what the tenant is doing is helping the landlord build equity. And yes, that can make some landlords very wealthy, but they assumed all the risk, they dealt with you, and they made strong financial decisions to be able to do that, because on an investment property, you have to put 30% down, which is a ton of money on like well over $100,000 on a lot of properties. And they're paying a higher interest rate because on investment properties, you pay a much higher interest rate. So they are assuming all this risk to better their financial position. So like, let's stop demonizing. There are horrible landlords out there, I get it, but they had to go through a lot to get that property. So instead of worrying about them making $200 on you, and heaven forbid in the future they sell that property and make money, let's instead think of a way to leverage the landlord, if you fit the situation of the debt, the credit, and all that, to get you where you want to be. And like, drop that attitude of like, I'm just gonna make somebody else rich. Here's how I would approach that situation. And I have also felt that way. It's like, I'm just throwing away money. But when money is tight for me, as it has been in the past, when I was making no money in TV news, now, although I have my fifth wheel now, is not, I don't want to make them rich, but instead, I'm going to transfer all the risk, all the worry, and the bulk of the cost onto this person, so that I can focus on what I need to do. And what this individual needs to do is work on their debt, dramatically improve their credit, and get all their other finances in a row so that they can go do the thing that they want to do, or at least get themselves in a better position. So it doesn't matter that they're making some money on you. What matters is I'm going to take all the risk of maintaining a property, of property taxes, of dealing with the mortgage, of if it's a adjustable rate mortgage, of the interest rates going back up again, all that, insurance claims, everything. I'm going to take all that risk that this individual can no longer maintain because they, as they've said, they don't have enough money to maintain the property. So I'm going to take all that and I'm going to give it to you. And I'm going to tip you $200 a month to deal with all this shit for me, so that I can go work on what I need to work. Now, if you look at it that way, does that still sound like a bad deal? Because it doesn't to me. I'm going to tip you $200 a month, so that, now obviously the rent is way more, but what they're making is $200. So I'm going to tip you $200 a month. You deal with all this shit. If the washing machine breaks, I'm not paying $650 for a new one. I'm not paying $250 for a service call. Roof leaks, you need a new roof, I'm not paying $20,000. All that's for you. I'm just going to give you $200 every month extra. You deal with it, because I have other shit to do. So that's how, when you're making a decision about renting, it's not a bad deal, because it takes all the risk and liability off of you. And the one thing that you can't handle when your finances are shit is risk and liability. Okay? Okay. So that was my suggestion, was sell that house. The market is hot. Get rid of that thing. Try to break even. And then go rent and work on your finances. Now, you might not make a ton of money, but opportunity cost. In a home, you have so much money tied up in a property, and then you can't go do the other thing that you need to be doing or that you want to be doing, okay? Now, there's a million ways to look at that situation and try to reassess it. So, keeping the property, should you keep the property, should you not? And again, I'm sure people will have all kinds of opinions about that. I'm just telling you, if it was me, I would sell the home so that I can use the money in that home, opportunity cost, pay down the debt, work on the credit, fix everything back up, leverage the landlord to take care of everything else while I do that. And then you can always go back and always buy another home or go travel or whatever you want to do. Okay? Okay. All right, so we talked about a house not being an asset. Another thing about the house not being an asset is if you want to keep the home and you don't want to sell it, think of ways to convert the house into an asset. You can convert almost anything into an asset, almost anything. When I had the Babe Cave, the renovations were extremely expensive, and I needed some way to turn that house into a money-making machine to pay for all the renovations because it was just becoming very overwhelming. Plus, I was going through my savings account like nobody's business. So I took the upstairs. It was 2,000 square feet. It was humongous. Like, I didn't need all that room. I went to the kitchen and then to my bedroom and that was it. I didn't need all that space. So I took the two bedrooms and a bathroom at the top, in the top floor, and I had them build a lockout door so only I could enter. They couldn't get onto my side of the house. And I put really pretty like Victorian decorations and a bed and a couch and a mini fridge and a coffee pot. And I put it up on Airbnb. Now I live at the beach. That thing not only paid for my mortgage every month, but and then some. So I turned the house into an asset. It made money, and then I could justify keeping the renovations and everything else going. I did not keep the house as an asset when I lost my job because there was too much risk. If we had a hurricane or something else and the Airbnb thing died in Wilmington, I would not have been able to keep it going. So I got rid of the risk and cashed out, and I have absolutely zero regrets about that because the house was a ton of work and there was no such thing as a cheap repair on a 112-year-old property. Okay, so see if you can convert your assets your liabilities into assets. Bob is a liability. He's not an asset. My truck. I could turn Bob into an asset by renting it out, which I would never do. Nobody's allowed to touch Bob. Or I could help people move. I could say for, $35 an hour, you load your stuff into the back of the pickup truck and I will drive it to your apartment location. But that's how you can convert things into assets. My camera gear. Now, I recently sold a ton of my camera gear because it wasn't making money. It was a liability. It was an asset. It became a liability. I didn't see in the future where it was going to turn back into an asset, so I got rid of it. But I could rent it out, and the second I rent it out, now my liability is an asset. So if you really, really want to keep the home and you have the debt and everything else, you better come up with a way to turn that big mortgage payment or anything else into an asset. Make an Airbnb, rent out a room in your home. I have lived in so many rooms in homes where people couldn't pay their mortgage. They rented out a room. It's not a lot of fun to live with a family of strangers, but it helps them out. It helped me out. Rent out your home to the movie studios. We have Screen Gems here. If you have a pretty house, you can see if they want to shoot a movie at your house. You can rent your space out for meetings, for weddings, anything like that. But as long as it's sitting there and just your home, it's a liability. And don't ever think otherwise. Okay? And the next thing I was going to talk to you about is like selling stuff. That was the next thing I told this individual to do. I said, whatever you can sell, sell. You've got to pay down that debt, and you've got to increase your credit score, or nobody's ever going to sell you an RV if that's what you want to do. Nobody's going to loan you anything if you have horrible credit. That will really kick you in the butt. So garages, basements, and attics, closets. I don't believe in these things. If I have them, they're usually empty. And I know I've said this before, but what I told this person to do is I said, go into your attic or your basement, closet, whatever, and I want you to just open up the door and stand there, especially if it's a garage. The thing with a car should go there. A car is never in there. It's just all your shit in boxes. And just stand there and look around at all this stuff that you never touch and say to yourself, all of this, everything the light touches, as Mufasa would say, used to be money, and now it's not. There's your opportunity cost. You had money in this hand, and now that money is tied up in all this stuff that you never touch. I know, especially men. It's one day, or we might use it, we might need it, but it doesn't. It sits in these boxes forever. And then the worst is people move from house to house, and they pack up all the stuff in that garage, just put it right on the moving truck, and move it to the next garage. You had that money. It is now tied up in all these trinkets that you don't use. Some of it is sentiment. It's so sentimental that you never look at it. Yeah, all that shit. Baby clothes. Yeah, all of it. And you now have the opportunity cost of it's all tied up. Can't do anything else with it. So sell it and use it to what you need now. I recently sold my big fancy camera. I had to save up very hard to buy that camera. I took a $1,000 loss because eBay is full of criminals and their fees and PayPal's fees were like out the roof. But I didn't really care because I had so much money tied up in that camera and I have to pay bills right now, and all my video work is like basically gone. So I have to move it from this hand to this hand. And it's not, was I upset about it? Sure, it cost a fortune and I was hoping to use it, but it wasn't an asset anymore. And I had things that I had to pay for, okay? So you just got to get rid of that emotional attachment. All of this used to be money. Put it on Craigslist. Know that Craigslist, you're going to get much closer to your asking price on Craigslist. Craigslist is old school, so you've got an older crowd selling there. Facebook Marketplace, everyone is going to try to rob you blind, but you will probably sell it faster. Facebook Marketplace is I've put something up on Facebook Marketplace, some kitchen gadget that I've bought and never used, still in the packaging, and it was $5, and I would get these messages that were like, what's the lowest you'll take? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? It's $5. $5. Everyone will try to negotiate down on Facebook Marketplace, so just know that it's full of stingy people. You're probably not going to get full price, so price it higher knowing they're going to come under, but it's a lot quicker. There's some other apps I don't remember what they are because I think they're all awful, but those are the two that I use. eBay will charge you way too much in fees and shipping and handling, so I wouldn't use that at all. But through that, you can get rid of practically everything. And then the stuff that is useful to other people but maybe nobody wanted, bag them up. And I say useful. Don't throw your garbage in this bag or stuff that's so worn and not purposeful anymore. But you can take all that, go to Goodwill, go to Red Cross or anywhere, and they will write you a receipt and you write in the value of everything you just dropped off, and then you can take that and deduct it off your taxes that year. So it is not cash in hand, but you can bounce it off your taxable income, which is helpful. And so, I had a set of plates that was actually a really nice set of plates. I don't know why, because I microwave everything and eat cereal, but I had them. And nobody wanted to pay me what they were worth. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not doing that. So I gave it to Goodwill. There's somebody who probably went to Goodwill and was like, holy shit, I can't believe these plates are in here. I just made their day. And then I got my 60, they were more than 60. I think it was closer to $100 back by doing it through tax tax, not deferral, but it's a tax write-off, okay? So get rid of all your stuff. Walk into that garage, into that attic. You've seen those shows where, like Hoarders, where they make you go through all your items. Just get rid of it, because you can't take it to heaven, or some of you are going straight to hell because I've read your comments, but just get rid of it. It has no emotional value. What did Marie Kondomondo say? Does it spark joy? Do that if you have to, but for me, I just say, I want the money back out of this thing. And that, the second I realize that I'm going to get money by selling this, and then I can go do something else that I need to do, like, nope, no emotional attachment whatsoever. When Allison, some of my girlfriends have bought me birthday presents, I remember Allison bought me something. It was like all kinds of van stuff. And in the note, she wrote, I will be checking Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for 2 weeks to make sure that you have not sold any of this. And it's true. I do that. If it's not useful anymore, if I'm not using it, if it's not making me money, boom, off it goes. The other thing I've done to make money wheeling and dealing is that when I've run out of my own stuff to sell, the neighborhoods, I'm a member of a couple of the neighborhood groups because I've moved so much, and people give away things all the time on those neighborhood group Facebook pages. So I remember there was one lady, she gave away like a really nice Keurig, and she just put it on the Facebook page and she said, does anyone want this? And I was like, oh, yeah. So I got it, cleaned it off, and flipped it for like $60. She didn't say, does anyone want this who lives in this neighborhood who would weep into their morning mug if they didn't have something that they got from someone else. Like, there were no terms and conditions. So yeah, I wanted it. That was the only thing she asked. And I appreciate her for that Keurig. Very much. So you can find stuff like that people are just getting rid of. When I lived closer to town, on Sunday nights, I would do my raccoon run. Sunday night, Monday morning is garbage day, and I lived right next to a very wealthy neighborhood, and people would put all kinds of stuff out for garbage, and so I would just walk around the neighborhood after the sun had set, where it'd be harder to take a picture of me and send it in to Most Wanted, and like just the stuff that they left on the side of the road. I mean, I got all kinds of things. I'd get like building materials. And yeah, like you'd see some tiny female dragging lumber back to her house. I'm sure it looked odd, but damned if I didn't make $20 off of that. Okay? So sell that, and then and I may not go into all this stuff right. You know what? I'm going to save the other tips just because I don't want this video to get too long. And plus, based on your interest about doing these, about like being scrappy and moving money around and how to do it and figuring out housing costs and other costs, if y'all are interested, I'll do more. If this video falls flat on its face, we'll just go on and do something else, because it doesn't... the only thing required of me is I have to do some research. I have to think about what I'm going to say. I have to think about what's most valuable to you, and then I have to put on a Detroit t-shirt. So it's not too much. It's not too much. Actually, I do think an awful lot about planning these out because I want them to be worthwhile. Okay, let me make sure this is dry erase and not anything else. On the subject of your housing costs, so there's a good deal of math that goes into this, and if housing is your biggest expense and it's tripping you up and you can't get the rig, take the vacation, anything else because your housing costs are too high, let's do a little gut check about reality, the thing that nobody else wants to talk about. And I hope you all can see that. Shit, it's gonna look tiny for you all. 20 and 36. These are some housing cost ratios that will help you figure out if you are way in over your head and need to adjust, or if you are right about where you are. So this is for owning, if you want to own a house. And I did a couple of this math in advance so we can not spend so much time on it. But in general, the idea is that 28% of your monthly housing expenses, so of your gross, your total before tax income every month, no more than 28% of that should go to your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. PITI, okay? So you should be hitting that number. Now 36 says that of your gross monthly income, so before taxes, your total household expenses, so your PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, plus your reoccurring debt, like debt that's going to come every month no matter what. You've got a car note, you've got student loan, like all that, all of your fixed monthly debts, that should not be more than 36%. So let's say, hypothetically, that your PITI, your house's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, is $1,100. That is crazy low. You would that doesn't exist in Wilmington. I'm trying to be kind, okay? So, and this is easy. You just look on your monthly statements. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. If every month it was $1,100, then what we would do is divide that by 0.28, and that comes out to $47,143. So you would have to make this amount of money to afford this house. Now I'm telling you this because when you go to buy a house, please don't think there is no law that says that your mortgage loan origination officer, your MLO, has to have any kind of fiduciary guidance or role in your life. A fiduciary meaning they are not there to no one is ever going to lean across the table and say, this might be more house than you can afford. They're going to say, oh, okay, you got this house under contract, let's write you a loan, okay? Yeah, let's just write loans. I mean, they're a lot more strict, but there's nothing in that person's job description that says that they have to look out for your financial decisions. They are not going to coach you or advise you. That is not their job. So, if you think that your housing costs are out of control, take that number and divide by 0.28. I won't make you go through the 0.36 because you're going to have to add up a lot of debt. And take a look, am I making enough money to pay for this house? And if the answer is no, then you have to change something about that situation. Okay? So I was making less than this. And I have very low debt because I won't take on debt unless, unless it... I won't get into how I rationalize what I'm going to pay interest on in this video, but I bought the house. I obviously had to pay interest on it. I knew I was going to sell it after I made the renovations, so I was willing to pay the interest on it. But anyway, my PITI was like $1,400 a month, and I was not making this. So I was in over my head. So am I giving good advice then? I bought the thing that was over my head. Yes, because I turned the house into an asset and my income on the Airbnb was like $2,000 a month. So I kicked the shit out of that number and it was actually making me money. I covered all my housing costs. So then this didn't matter so much. But most people are not willing to do that. So simple equation just to figure out if your housing situation is screwed. All right, so that's one for doing your home that you own, right? What if it was rent? In general, the kind of old school rule is that your rent, this is going to be backwards for y'all. That's too bad. The old equation is you take your monthly income and you multiply it by 0.30, 30%, and that tells you the maximum you should spend on rent. And so in that case, the general rent in Wilmington is about $1,250 per month, and at 30%, that would mean that we would have to make $50,000 per year to pay $50,000 per year to afford that. And the sad irony is that the typical wage in Wilmington, North Carolina is $30,000 a year. So everyone is over leveraged on rent. And they take on debt. I have no idea, but this is, again, simple equation. Am I paying too much rent? If you're paying too much rent, you've got to find a cheaper place to live. I don't know how to cuddle you about that. Remember, I lived in my car, And people, when I was living in the car, they were like, you just sold your van. You have the money. Go get an apartment. And again, that's when opportunity cost, only hold the money in one hand. Because I knew that every time I spent $1,200, or a temporary apartment's going to be about $1,800 a month, then I couldn't put that money towards the war wagon. And I wasn't willing to make that sacrifice. I wasn't going to give away money on rent and not spend it on the rig. If I had spent money on rent and tried to buy the rig, that's monkey bar syndrome. That's saying I deserve to have both things when I can't actually afford them. And if I had done that, I would not have been able to afford the war wagon. So I made a huge sacrifice of comfort. And what you'll see most people do is they've already moved into the apartment, they've got all their shit in there, all their garages and closets and all that are full of stuff, and like they don't want to have to deal with this. But if you can't afford it, and that's the math, like this isn't my opinion. This is the ratios that actually dictate what you can and cannot afford. When people to go buy a house and they go rent an apartment, they don't actually sit down and do the math and like, can I actually afford this? They're like, oh, we'll make it work. And make it work has sent millions of Americans into debt. All right, so the other way of looking at this is the 50-30-20 rule. I don't actually like this one. I don't use this when calculating for myself. A lot of people do like it because it gives them more money for frivolous shit. So I'll give it to you for that regard. But this is like the updated one for, I guess millennials. But it says that 50%, this is your needs. And we talked about needs and wants. This is your wants. And this is your savings. So the theory here is that you take your after-tax income, after tax, and multiply that by 0.5 and say everything that I need, my essentials, utilities, your rent payment, medical insurance, health insurance, that has to be under 50%, and then 30% can be for all my wants, for all the stuff that I don't need but I want, and then 20% to savings. I don't actually like this one because when you do this with people, they tend to like combine this 50% and it all just goes under wants. I meet very few people who can stick to 20. So I would say the more stringent of a calculation, the better. But it's another one to look at your expenses and just say, like, what is the ratio? If you meet this ratio, you'll be fine. If you meet 30%, you should be fine. But a lot of it also has to do with how much debt you have, right? And how much debt payment. So if you were doing this, your debt payment would come out of your need because you need to pay the debt down. You owe that shit, yeah? All right? So, two ways of looking at it. So now, last but not least, we've looked at like, can you afford the house? Can you afford the rent? Should you move? Should you sell the house? Should you move into a cheaper apartment? I'm not advocating that anyone live in your car, but most people who watch this channel, they want to buy the RV. And so for this particular individual who's dealing with all this debt and all that, they wanted to move into an RV to save money. Their thinking was that it was going to be cheaper than all the other options. Well, we already know that they can't afford the house, and the city that they live in is a very big and expensive city, so I'm not quite sure what rent is, but rent is probably also going to be up there. But so I just did some rough numbers on, well, what if we just move into an RV? Because lots of people have this theory that, like, that's just such a cheaper way of living. Like, wow, let's just sell everything and let's do that. Okay, let's talk about that. All right, I'm going to assume that the rig is a motorhome, so I'm not going to do 2 cars, it's too much math. On the cheap side, $60K. You find a motorhome for less than that, you probably have to put thousands and thousands into maintenance and tires and all that. So I'm going to be nice and say $60K. You bought it new, you're paying a fortune. But let's say that $60K, we'll just do that, okay? And then I'm going to assume that it's a 7-year note at 5% interest. 7 years at 5% interest. Be careful. These RV dealerships will let you take those notes out for like 15 years. And then what you'll pay in insurance is stupid. So no more than 7. Come on. So 7 years. And then you put $5,000 down. A lot of people don't put much of anything down. I'm trying to like be gracious in these numbers. All right, so this is the save money solution. Save money. Let's see. Okay, so what we have, this, when you actually do the math on this, I've already done it. It comes out to $770.36 per month. So the cost to finance the rig, $777, okay? So now you're going to have, in that first year, you have to pay sales tax, and every year you have to pay property tax. So that's going to come in at, oh, I don't have my calculator. I did the final numbers on this. I didn't, let me round that down. Let's say it's $300 a month, okay? And then your insurance, that's going to vary incredibly, but let's say insurance is, I'll go low, $80 a month. $80 a month. And then you have to have somewhere to park the damn thing. So I'm going to assume that you're going to be in a park with long-term parking. Now, if you want a long-term spot in Wilmington, North Carolina, you're going to pay $900 to $1,200. I know some of you live in the Midwest where it's a lot cheaper, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to average and say that you're going to pay $600 a month for your long-term parking spot. If you think you're going to save money by going to travel, that's going to be well over $1,000. If you are like using a space on your friend's lawn, obviously you scratch that off. But ultimately, in the end, what we come out to is a very cool $1,760 a month for the cheap way to live. What a cheap RV live. It's not cheap. It is not cheap. Now, I know you can go stay on BLM land and all that, but at some point, you're going to get hot, you're going to need air conditioning, you're going to have like some semblance of a normal life, because I'm also doing this. Now, I know that there's like whole channels dedicated to people like living off grid. They live for no money at all. They live in like a hollowed out cargo van and they have no needs whatsoever. Those people are not showing up to a job every morning at 8:30. They live a different kind of life. If you fit this bill where you are still in your working years and you are trying to pay off the debt and trying to work on the credit score and all that, I'm assuming that you are working. So if you're working, you are not going to live out in the woods and like live for no cost at all. If you have to show up to work, then chances are you have to take a shower in the morning, you have to cook breakfast, you have to get the kids to school and everything else. So you're not doing what they're doing. So why are you listening to their story? I mean, it sounds really romantic, like live on the side in the desert and like communal living and just solar and nothing like that. And yeah, if you're on Social Security or disability or you have trust fund money and you're not having to work, then like you can do that. I'm doing the math for the working person, because you will have to somehow have power in the shower and all that. Power in the shower, yeah. And so you are not going to live for free. You are going to be paying onwards to $2,000 a month for that super cheap thing that you thought. So, you know, when we look at it that way, it's like, all right, well, $1,760 every month I'm throwing away $600 a month to park, you know, or do you get if you're trying to alleviate debt, do you get the apartment for $1,200 a month and just do nothing but take all that extra money and throw it at your debt, okay? Now, everyone's going to have a different opinion about this. I understand that. You can do the math 500 different ways, because this is a huge country and there are people from all over the world that watch it, and all these costs vary. I'm just giving you a general idea of how, when I looked at doing all these things, some things made more sense than others. And the big one is I don't know why anybody has ever said that living in an RV is cheap. You know, some people have said like, well, you know, your costs are not that much because like you were able to put a lot down on the war wagon and all that. And I said, right, but that means that I have a lot of money in the war wagon and I can't then I can't pay down, this medical bill, or I can't buy the land that I want for the cows, or I can't do anything. Like, your money is always tied up, okay? And so in this individual's case, and for this budget bootcamp session, this person, their money is tied up in very high interest rates from debt and a home that they can no longer afford to pay. And so at the end, as your drill sergeant, advice is still to sell the home if you cannot maintain it anymore, so that the home doesn't fall apart and then you have to sell it for rock bottom prices to an investor, or just foreclose or anything like that. Sometimes I wonder, well, why do we have foreclosures when the housing market is good? You just sell it. And the reason is that people don't want to let go. They have the monkey bar syndrome. And so they're trying to move on to this thing, but they don't want to sell their house, and they don't want to let go, and they don't want to admit that it's not financially working, and then they sink their own battleship, okay? All right, well, if there's other aspects of how to be scrappy with money, or how to look at finances, or simple calculations you can do to figure out your money situation, please do put those in the comment section so I can see if this is something that y'all would want to keep around. The only things that I haven't touched on this video, which we could do in another one, is how I established my fuck you fund, and then over leveraging, how to look at unnecessary things that you have over leveraged, and then I wrote notes. I don't even know what they mean, but I hope that was all, especially the ratios, because once you figure out how to do those, you can really make some smart decisions about how to spend your money. Because I think the biggest problem that most of us have is that we look at debt as a moment in time and not as along its trajectory. And we really do this with college kids, and just fuck them for life. Because when they're 18, we look at a $100,000 education and say, oh, well, you'll pay it off over here. But we don't know that. We have no idea what kind of job they're going to get, or the job economy, or anything like that. So we saddle them with all this debt based on an imaginary picture that doesn't exist over here. And a lot of people do that with housing and other big expenses. They grab a hold of all this debt, they look at it as a moment in time based on a rosy picture over here. And they don't look at debt over a continuum. And the problem with doing that, when you are making big purchases, or when you are trying to figure out where to allocate your money, is that on that first initial debt, we take that debt out, and now student loan debt can be dragged out well into your 30s. So now that 18-year-old has that debt, and we pull that debt across. And then they get a car, and so we grab that debt in a moment, and then that debt pulls across. And then we have student loan debt. Sorry, we already took care of student loan debt. Then let's say they miss some credit card payments, and boom, that debt. Now pull that debt across. And I don't know if you can tell, my hands are moving up, but then you get this late 20s, some-year-old, and they have all these layers of debt, because when we take on debt, we just look at a moment in time. And people will finance couches now, they'll finance cars, they'll finance decorations for around their house. I mean, you can finance everything. And so finance every time you go to a store, take out another store card, and they build up this straight up pyramid of debt. And then it's well, now what do I do? And I think that speaks to the story of this person. I have no doubt they'll figure it out. But if you've got all that debt, you've got to pay it off and get rid of it. And so you've got to look at where your money is and think, like a chess game, where can I move to knock down that pyramid of debt? And while I'm doing that, not add more layers of stupid shit that you do not need. I thought I still had my needs and wants up there. All right, well, I hope that was helpful. I've already shared quite at length about the decision to sell my home. I don't regret it. at all. And it's the same theory, you know, people have said, well, why would you sell the war wagon? You just got it. And it's because the income situation has changed. That said, no one's made an offer on it yet. But I have bills that I have to pay. And so if all the money is tied up in the war wagon, I can't spend it on this. So tough decisions, but this is the reality. All these numbers and everything we've talked about of when you want to make the next thing happen, you've got to deal with the last decision that you made. Sucks, but yeah, real talk. Okay. All right. Bye, weirdos.